Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Saturday Breakdown. Derek, what's going on today?
Not a whole lot. I've actually been watching MLB for the first time in years and having a good time.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Well, that's great. I don't generally watch much this time of year because I'm busy busy with
Yeah.
football. Um, Liberal did not play last night, so I had a chance to kind of listen to some games on the radio and try to keep up with some games last night. Although other things happened as always, so I didn't get to do that as much as I wanted to. But there were some big matchups last night in the state. The playoff pictures have really started to take shape a lot of places. So, as we go through this, there's a few games that we'll kind of particularly highlight, but we're going to give you scores from around the state. We're going to focus now on the top-ranked teams in each classification as we go through it, in addition to the four leagues that we always cover. Let's start off in the WAC. Hayes had a very close game last night with Maize South, and Maize South beats Hayes 21-20. So Hayes' undefeated season ends last night against Maize South. Garden City was at Ulysses last night, and Garden City comes out on top against Ulysses 38-8. I was really surprised by that score. Wasn't surprised that Garden City won necessarily, but I was surprised that they won by 30 points. I mean, Ulysses had won 3 in a row. Ulysses had beaten us and we beat Garden City. So I really thought that would be a pretty close game, and Garden City kind of blew it open.
Do they have like a lot of? Do they publish a lot of the information as far as like if teams are missing key players because of COVID? Or
no, you really never know that, and that's this year. That's that's always a factor. You never know who a team might be missing. I mean, and it's not just COVID. I mean, in a normal year, you never know who a team might be missing due to injury or eligibility or whatever. And this year you add COVID to it and the potential for quarantines and things like that. And I think that has made this season a lot more unpredictable. And speaking of that, Great Bend last night canceled their game with Eisenhower, I believe because of COVID issues. And so Dodge City, who was open, picked up Eisenhower, and Eisenhower beat Dodge City 37-30. And that's it for WAC action last night. Those 3 games were it. In the Great Western Athletic Conference, we had Colby and Scott City. This looked like it could be one of the matchups of the week, but it was all Scott City. Scott City beats Colby 28-0 last night. Pratt beat Holcomb 35-22, a game that was honestly a little closer than I expected it to be. And then a big game last night, as far as I was concerned, was Larned and Hugoton. These were 2 teams with kind of mediocre records, but they were playing for something pretty important for both teams. A win last night for Hugoton would have locked them in the playoffs, and Larned, a loss would have eliminated them from the playoffs. And last night, Larned gets a 48-18 win over Hugoton. And I'll be honest with you, I listened to most of that game on the radio, and it was never close, to be honest with you. Yeah, Larned got on them early. Hugoton had a couple of turnovers early. Larned kicked an onside kick and recovered it, and they never looked back, really.
Is it like, can you get like radio versions of a lot of games, or is it pretty limited on what you get there in Elkhart?
Last night I was having trouble finding much on the radio. I couldn't find the Ulysses Garden City game, which I thought I'd be able to find. I was listening to the Hugoton game, and I was listening a little bit to the Cimarron TMP game, but I don't even know what radio station I was getting it on, to be honest with you. It was an AM station, and I never listened long enough to get the call letters of the station, but I just picked up some scores occasionally. Goodland last night got another win, 33-16 over Russell, which was expected. And in the big game last night, in both the district and in the GWAC, Cimarron 12, TMP 16. And that was a heck of a game. TMP led 3-0 at halftime. Cimarron jumped up 12-3, and TMP came back to win at 16-12. In the High Plains League last night, the big game in the High Plains League was Syracuse and Lakin. Lakin gets a 6-point win, 22-16 over Syracuse. Syracuse started off this year really strong. They started off 3-0, and since then they have lost 4 straight games. Lakin is 4-3 now, with their losses have mostly come against pretty tough competition. I think they've lost to Stratford, Texas, Cimarron, and Scott City maybe. I'm not sure who that third loss is to, but they've lost to pretty good teams. Elkhart last night had Sedgwick coming to town. I don't think anybody expected this game to be close. To be honest with you, Elkhart scored more than I thought they would. It ended up Sedgwick 52, Elkhart 21.
There you go.
Yeah. Stanton County and Conway Springs. Again, Stanton County is really down, and Conway Springs is a very solid team. Conway Springs wins that one 57-0. Southwestern Heights falls 47-12 to Ellis, and Sublette loses to Wichita Independent 55-24. In the South Plains Iroquois League, in a big game for that league, South Gray, who is undefeated, hung on at 22-20 over Hodgman County. So that game, I knew it would be a good game. I was a little surprised it was that low scoring. Obviously, both defenses played well in that game. Buckland beats Ingalls 56-32. Another game that we expected to be a pretty good game in the Southern Plains Iroquois League was Ness City and Meade. Ness City didn't start real strong, but boy, they've come on strong the last 2 or 3 weeks. Ness City gets a 48-0 win over Meade. Meade has lost 3 straight now after starting off well. Leota still showing why they're the one of the top ranked teams in the state. Leota 62-12 over a pretty tough Spearville team. And the others, then we get a couple of forfeits here. Mineola gets a 1-0 win over Dighton. South Central gets a 1-0 win over Satanta. That 1-0 score, that always denotes to you a forfeit. Now, if it's a forfeit, I assume that means that it was not a COVID issue, because we're not scoring COVID cancellations as forfeits this year. So that was probably a situation where maybe Dighton didn't have enough, and Satanta maybe didn't have enough players to play for various reasons, eligibility, injuries, whatever. But it's not a COVID thing, or it wouldn't be listed, I don't think, as a forfeit. Kind of like our game against Cape and Mount Carmel, right? We canceled the game, so it's listed as a forfeit. But if it had been a COVID issue, it would not have been listed as a forfeit. All right, and the last game in the Southern Plains Iroquois League is Kiowa County 18, Maxville 66. There were several really good games last night, and then there were some that were surprisingly lopsided. I was really surprised by that Hugoton-Larned game. Number one, I thought Hugoton would win it, but number two, I certainly did not expect it to be as lopsided as it was. Let's go on now. 6A, here we're just going to take a look at the top 5 teams in each classification. In 6A, number 1, Lawrence gets a 1-point win, 21-20 over number 3, Olathe North. Number 2, Derby, in the big upset of the night. Number 2, Derby loses 35-36 to 5A, number 4, Mays. Number 4, Junction City gets a big 62-15 win over Emporia. And number 5, Shawnee Mission Northwest squeaks out a 38-35 win over a very good Gardner Edgerton team. In 5A, Wichita Northwest and East. Now, these are 2 teams that have been scoring tons of points. As a matter of fact, I'll just remind you of their scores against Wichita North. East beat North 80-0. Northwest beat North 92-0. Okay, and they've been scoring scores like that all season, and so everybody expected this to be a wide open offensive game. Northwest wins 17-2 over East. So the 2 defenses obviously played much better in that game. Number 2, Mill Valley wins 34-10 over Olathe East. Number 3, St. Thomas Aquinas loses 49-6 to Omaha West Side, which was, by the way, the number 1 ranked team in Nebraska.
Really?
Yeah. Again, Maize, number 4 in 5A Maize with a 36-35 win over number 2 in 6A Derby. And number 5, Bishop Carroll with a 56-35 win over 4A number 1 Bishop Miege. And so that takes care of 4A number 1. Bishop Miege falls to Carroll 35-56. Number 2, Paola beats Eudora 31-26, a surprisingly close game there. Number 3 in 4A, Tonganoxie 35-0 over Shawnee Mission East. Number 4 in 4A, McPherson 52-0 over Mulvane. And number 5 in 4A, Lansing loses 26-33 to Bajor Lindwood. Now in 3A, Andale, number 1 Andale 40-21 over Clearwater. Number 2, Perry Lecompton loses 10-0 to number 3 Hayden. So the number 3 team in 3A beats the number 2 team in 3A 10-0. Number 4, Southeast of Saline gets a 53-8 win over Smoky Valley. And number 5 in 3A, Cheney gets a 42-6 win over Nickerson. In 2A, number 1 and number 2 played each other last night. Number 1, Rossville gets a 50-35 win over number 2, Silver Lake. Number 3, Hoisington gets a 33-6 win over Norton. Number 4, Hutch Trinity loses to Haven 18-20. And number 5, Mar Hill gets a 37-14 win over St. Mary's. That brings us to 1A. Number 1 in 1A is Olpe. They win 61-0 over Northern Heights. Number 2 in 1A last night, Centralia took on number 5 Linden, and Centralia gets a 48-17 win over Linden. Number 3 in 1A is Smith Center, 46-13 over El Saline. And number 4 in 1A, Conway Springs, is 57-0 over Stanton County. In 8-man Division 1, number 1 is Canton Galva. They're 66-0 winners over Solomon last night. Number 2, Leota, in a score we gave earlier, 62-12 over Spearville. Number 3, Madison, 54-0 over Flint Hills. Number 4, Clifton Clyde, 64-16 over a pretty darn good Argonia Attica team. And number 5, Little River, 54, Harrington 6. And 8-man Division 2, St. Francis, 62 over Wheatland Grinnell, 16. Hanover was open last night. Number 2, Hanover. Number 3, Victoria is a 58-0 winner over Tescott. Number 4, Lebo is a 70-40 winner over Thunder Ridge. And that was a game that ended up being a non-district game because there was a COVID cancellation for both teams, and they picked each other up kind of at the last minute. And number 5, Frankfort, their game was canceled as well. And that pretty much does it for the state of Kansas. We've got some games to run through quickly in Oklahoma and Texas. By the way, Oklahoma schools played on Thursday because this is what they call their fall break. They take a 3-day weekend, which a lot of the schools in Kansas had a 3-day weekend this weekend too, but they still play on Friday night. In Oklahoma, though, they always play this on Thursday night before this break. So let's take a look at these. Are just mostly Oklahoma Panhandle schools. Turpin 58 over Canton 12. Guthrie 72, Guyman 0. So Guyman's first game back after losing their coach 72-0, which is, similar to the scores they were having before they lost.
Oh, really? I was going to say, maybe call him back, but maybe I don't know.
Yeah, no.
That's pretty bad.
Yeah, that's Guyman's having a rough year in more ways than one. Hooker 47 over Burns Flat Dill City 14. Texhoma wins 31-14 over Fairview. Buffalo is 60-12 over Beaver. Tyrone at home 49-0 over Corn Bible Academy. Shattuck 52-6 over Balco Forgan. And Woodward gets a big win. Woodward 17, Lawton Eisenhower 14. Woodward's having a pretty good year. In the Texas Panhandle, we've got Perryton 34, Levelland 7, Wichita Falls 33, Amarillo Caprock 14, Randall County 59, Lubbock High 0, Dumas 42, Plainview 8, Borger 23 over Lubbock Estacado 20. That's Borger's first win of the year. Bushland 41, River Road 7, Spearman 1, Amarillo Highland Park 0. So that's a forfeit there. My guess is that may be a COVID thing. In Texas, they may be counting those as forfeits. Canadian 78, Dimmitt 0. Canadian is the dominant force in the Texas Panhandle football right now. Panhandle 67, West Texas High 50. Groover Booker, I could not find a score on, which makes me think that the game may not have taken place. Mm-hmm. And Stratford 61, Sunray 25. Although there were several scores in Kansas that I really had to look to find. So, it's getting to be that time of year. The 6-man schools in Kansas started their playoffs, and they played on Thursday. I did not find any scores, and I'll update you on those Wednesday. But I do know that Moscow beat Deerfield. I don't know a score, though, but we'll update you on those 6-man scores Wednesday and kind of show you what their playoff picture looks like a little bit, too. And then they'll play their state championship game well before the rest of the classifications in Kansas play their state championship game, and it's held in Dodge City, so it's one that if you live here in this area, it's easy to go see. All right, let's look at the matchups for next week. By the way, next week is the last week of the regular season, so a lot of these are key matchups to determine seeding for the 4, 5, and 6A schools, or to determine district championships in the 1, 2, and 3 and the 2 8-man divisions. In the GWAC, you've got 6-1 Holcomb playing 3-4 Hugoton. Hugoton needs a win against Holcomb to lock themselves into the playoffs. That may be a tall order for Hugoton. They could still back into the playoffs if a couple of other teams lose. But Hugoton, if they don't beat Holcomb, is going to need some help to get into the playoffs. Colby, 5-2 Colby, takes on 3-3 Goodland. Again, with a win there, Colby locks themselves into the playoffs. Goodland, I'm not sure, but we'll take a look at the playoff picture Wednesday. Cimarron, 4-3 Cimarron is at 3-4 Ellis. That again is Cimarron's sitting in pretty good shape. It looks like they probably, with a win over Ellis, they'll finish second in the district. If they were to happen to lose to Ellis, they're still going to make the playoffs. So they're already locked into the playoffs. And we've got 5-2 Scott City at 6-0 southeast of Saline. That could be a pretty darn good game. Scott City lost a couple of games early, but they have come on and really played strong in the last 2 or 3 weeks. And I think, southeast of Saline's pretty good, but I think Scott City may give them a game. I think that should be a great game there. In the I skipped over Ulysses. And we've got 3-4 Ulysses at 2-5 Dodge City. In the High Plains League, Lakin takes on TMP. Now, remember, Cimarron just lost a close one to TMP. So Lakin's going to probably have a tough time beating TMP. If they were to beat TMP, though, it's going to throw that district into a 3-way tie for first, probably. Okay. If they lose, though, Lakin still, I believe, is locked into the playoffs. Syracuse, 3-4 versus 1-6 Southwestern Heights. Syracuse, I believe, punches their tickets to the playoffs with a win over Heights. However, if they lose to Heights, I believe they're eliminated from the playoffs. And again, we'll talk about some of that stuff Wednesday. 2-5 Elkhart is at 2-5 Whitewater Remington. They are both making the playoffs because in 1A, where those two teams are, everybody's making the playoffs. Okay. Same for Sublette. 1-4 Sublette at 5-2 Oakley. Everybody's in the playoffs. Same thing with 0-7 Stanton County versus 2-5 Wichita Independent. So yeah, they're in 1A there. Elkhart, Sublette, Stanton County, they're all going to make the playoffs. they're playing for other things right now. All right, in the WAC, Hayes, 5-1 Hayes closes their season out at 5-1 Cape and Mount Carmel, their regular season, that is. We've already said Dodge City's taking on Ulysses. Liberal is open, and Garden City has Great Bend. Great Bend had to cancel their game against Cape and Mount Carmel Friday. I don't know for sure that they'll play Garden City this Friday. I assume they probably will, but that one to me is a little bit up in the air. And in the Iroquois League, the game of the week, maybe the game of the season, 7-0 South Gray versus 7-0 Leota. That is for the district championship. We've got 4-3 Hodgman County versus 2-3 Meade. 5-2 South Central versus 2-5 Ingalls. 4-3 Spearville versus 3-3 Ness City, but Ness City's 3 wins have come right in a row here, their last 3 games, and they've come against good competition too. So the Ness City Spearville game ought to be a good game. 4-3 Buckland versus 1-5 Dighton. Dighton did forfeited last week. I don't know if they'll play this week against Buckland or not. 2-5 Kiowa County versus 3-3 La Crosse. 3-4 Mineola versus 0-7 Satanta, and Satanta forfeited last week too, so I don't know if they'll play this week. So we got a couple of those that to me are question marks. But like I said, things are taking shape. Wednesday, we'll take a look at the playoff picture in Kansas. We'll take a look at each district, and we'll take a look at seeding in 4, 5, and 6A. Obviously, it's not decided yet, but we're starting to get to where we can make some pretty good guesses at some of that stuff. We'll also do predictions Wednesday. It's, we're getting down to that time of the season, and we're open again Friday. I don't know for sure what our plans will be as a team Friday, but hopefully I'll get a chance to get out and go watch a game. I wish I had gotten a little more of a chance to do that last night, but
I've got 2 questions for you.
Yeah, absolutely.
First question, what decides what A you get? I'm very stupid.
Okay, great.
Yeah, explain the A system to me. I've never known. I assume it has to do with population, but explain it to me.
Yeah, that's a great question. First of all, Kansas does it differently than other states, okay? So what I can tell you is how Kansas does it. And they do it differently in football than they do in other sports, okay? So in Kansas, they have decided that they're going to have 6 classifications, and they're going to have 2 8-man divisions. So 8-man is its own classification with 2 divisions. So really, realistically, there are 8 classifications in Kansas in football, okay? So the way Kansas does it is this. The 32 biggest teams in the state are 6A, okay? Now, for football, the way you define that is your 9th, 10th, and 11th grades. Okay, so your total enrollment in 9th, 10th, and 11th grade determines your football number. Okay, and they lock those games in for 2 years. That's why they do 9, 10, and 11 instead of 10, 11, and 12. In every sport other than football, they take grades 10, 11, and 12, your enrollment in those 3 grades. But even the numbers of schools are different in the other sports. So first we'll talk about football, then I'll tell you how the other. So the 32 biggest schools are 6A. Then the next 32 are 5A. Then the next 32 are 4A. After that, the formula starts to change. So the next 48 are 3A. The next 48 are 2A, and everyone else that plays 11-man football is 1A, 11-man, okay? And right now that is 28 schools, which is why everybody makes the playoffs, because it's a 32-team bracket, okay? So in 2A and 3A, those are the only classifications of 11-man ball where everybody doesn't make the playoffs, okay? Only 32 of the 48 teams in 2A and 3A will make the playoffs. Now, all of the 8-man schools, they take them and they split them into 2 divisions. Okay. Whatever the cut line is, whatever the halfway point is, we'll have X number of teams that are Division 1 and X number of teams that are Division 2. I would have to go look it up. Well, here, I can pull up K-Prep.
We have the technology, Norm.
Yeah, I know. I was going to say, let me pull up K-Preps real quick here, and I'll tell you how many schools there are in each one.
So really, it's it's a 2-year grade.
Yeah, football you lock in for 2 years. Every other sport they classify every year. The reason why they do that in football is so that your schedules can be locked in 2 years at a time, home and home with everyone. Mm-hmm. Okay, so when you schedule football, you schedule 2 years. You schedule a home and home game with everybody you schedule.
It is a headache because, like, nobody. First of all, my other point tonight, while you looked that up, was, are you looking forward to that breath of fresh air whenever the final down is played this season, and you guys can all pat yourselves on the back and say we did it? We played somewhat of a football season.
Kind of this year, I think. Yes.
I did not think you guys were going to. Your first few shows, I was like,
nope. Yeah, I didn't think we would get through the whole season either, and we haven't yet. But it looks like we're going to. I'm with you. At the first of this year, I wasn't sure we would get through the whole season. I honestly could envision us getting partway through the season and having it all shut down.
Yeah.
But luckily we got through it. All right. So right now, 8-man 2 is split into 8 6-team divisions. So that is 48 schools in 8-man 2. I'm going to assume then that the number is the same in 8-man 1, or at least really close. Might be not, yeah, that's exactly it. 48 schools in 8-man 1 also. So that means then that only 32 out of each of those will make the playoffs. So again, all but 16 teams make the playoffs in 8-man 1 and 8-man 2. So there are your 4 divisions. But yeah, you're right. This is one season that I'm not sure any of us knew whether or not we would get to the end of. It looks like now we're going to, although there are certainly a lot of places in the state where the numbers are way up. Even here in Elkhart, we've kind of had a recent explosion. I mean, they went from 0 active cases to 14 or 15 at least active cases just in the last week or two,
I've seen 2 Morton County publications in the last week. Like, I was noticing there was some movement going on over there.
Yeah, so
I framed yours.
Yeah.
Norm made the news.
But yeah, it's, and I was reading today about Gove County, I think it was, where the numbers are just exploding, and so, yeah. And, I looked even in Seward County, most places they determine your phases according to what percentage of people are testing positive. And I noticed, and most places, if it's above 5%, it's considered high. Well, I noticed in for instance, in Garden City, I think it's 17% in Finney County, and in Seward County, it's 20% that, of cases are testing positive. Now, I don't know that that's a good metric to use, because some of that depends on, are you testing everybody, or are you only testing people with symptoms? Or, there are so many ways that you can manipulate that,
Yeah.
I think in places like Finney County and Seward County and places like that where they've had some pretty heavy outbreaks, they're literally testing anybody that wants a test.
Yeah.
If you want a test, you go get a test. And so obviously, that's probably going to skew numbers for them a little. Whereas, say, a county like Morton County, where they're only going to test you if you've got symptoms, you would think that they would have a much higher percentage of positive tests, right?
Yeah.
You would think that places where they're testing everybody, that they'd have a lot lower percentage of positive tests, but obviously they don't, because, like I said, Seward County's 20% or over, so I don't know.
How it got to Little Elkhart, Kansas, I'll never know.
Well, People from Elkhart got to go someplace else, to do so much. So.
Me and Sarah were doing a show in like January, and we played some like video that was everybody I showed it to was like, that's propaganda, and it was just some nurse from China saying like, no, this is really bad, and me and Sarah got kind of scared at that point. We were like, I believe this, but yeah, it's been I didn't really I got scared that it was real, but I didn't think it would ever hit Elkhart. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I know. They're just. I'm not trying to downplay anything. This disease has killed a lot of people, and it's going to continue to kill a lot of people. The one thing when it comes to the schools, though, is that the threat to the actual students seems to be relatively small with this disease. Unlike a lot of diseases, the flu kills a lot more young people than it does old people, and so it's a completely different kind of thing. And that, I suppose, has been a blessing as far as schools and sports and stuff go. Even if you look even into college, they've got high positive tests, but they've got very, very few, if any, hospitalizations, and very, as a matter of fact, now here I'm talking about among athletes. Okay.
Yeah.
There have been very few hospitalizations, I think in the single digits, and there have been no deaths among athletes, and so that's a blessing, and my guess is if we look at high school kids, obviously the numbers are going to be a lot higher, but my guess is we would see again, well, and I know we would, I just don't remember the numbers off the top of my head. We're seeing very low hospitalization rates and almost no deaths among high school students. Obviously, and when you're talking about nationwide, you can't say none, because probably there are some, but
do you have fans at the volleyball games right now?
Yeah, absolutely. Now, most of the schools, the bigger schools out in this area, because Finney County and Ford County and Seward County have higher numbers, most of them do have caps on the crowds. You only allow a certain number. I don't know off the top of my head what that number is, but I think most of them are operating at about 25% of capacity or less. I noticed that Garden City, for their football games, they were allowing family of the players and coaches plus like 120 general admission on the home side, and then family of the players and coaches, and a few less than that, like maybe 60 or 80 on the visitor side,
Mm-hmm.
And and there are other places where like it's almost like a club, right? Everybody's got to get a wristband when they come in, and so everybody's doing it a little different. Most of the small schools, though, there are no limits on capacity. And you don't even, in a lot of the small schools and small towns, you're not even seeing people wearing masks much. In most of the bigger towns, masks are required, and the capacity is limited. But that's again because of those higher positive rates in most of those bigger towns. Here in Elkhart, it's pretty much life as usual. Even with the recent spike, you'll see a few people wearing masks around town, but not many. The pictures I've seen from the school. Now, I don't know. I'm not in the school, so this is just purely anecdotal. But the pictures I see from the school, I don't see anybody wearing masks, and I see people pretty close together. Of course, people always get close together for pictures, so so like I said, I'm not being critical there. It looks to me like it's life is normal. Yeah, it is.
I have good friends like that are. When the mask thing was going around and everything, they were very critical about, you should wear a mask. But then they would send me a Snapchat of them at a party that weekend sharing a drink with somebody. I'm just like, what? But I don't know. I guess we were all scared of this. We all want to take it seriously, but like any chance we get to feel normal, it's like we almost just go a little too far. Next thing you know, you're hugging somebody that could be, sick. You don't know. It's like.
And that's the thing. I think you're exactly right in that we're all craving normalcy, and we probably do some things that we shouldn't do because of that. And fortunately for many, many people, this disease is not bad,
Mhm.
and yet for some it's devastating. I mean, if you look at some of the symptoms that some people have, they're horrifying. Luckily, a lot of people, even most people to a certain extent, are relatively asymptomatic. And especially the younger you are, the more likely you are to be asymptomatic. And so, like I said, that's been our blessing in the schools. We've had a lot of schools with a lot of positive tests, but luckily haven't had a whole lot of sick kids. I mean, they've technically got the disease, but they're not really sick from it, And so we've been lucky in that respect, and hopefully we'll continue to be lucky.
Well, I'm really impressed by it because, like, really, when you're a kid going to high school and stuff, and like the game on Friday is an option. It's like you can go to a buddy's house, play video games, or you can go to the game. And a lot of times you chose to go to the game, even if you weren't into sports. It was a thing, And so I don't know. Yeah, like you said, everybody craves that normalcy.
Yeah, I think so. And that's we're getting close to the end of the season, and like I said, we've made it so far. So far, so good. Obviously there have been a lot of games called off. We've had to do things on the fly, but so far everybody's been pretty adaptable. The state, I think, has made some good decisions, the State Activities Association, and that's not something that I often credit the State Activities Association with, is making good decisions, but I think they have when it comes to this. And so far we've been lucky, and like I said, I think we're going to get the season in. I think we're going to get the playoffs in. Hopefully, the rest of the school year continues to go well too. That's still one of those questions, I mean, when winter rolls around, kind of like cold and flu season always hit us during the winter, are we going to have, a big increase with COVID? And I don't think anybody knows that. I don't think even the experts know that. And
in a way, it kind of doesn't even matter if it is COVID, because if you have symptoms of any sort, like
you're right. You're right. If you've got a flu or the cold or anything like that,
you cough by me in the grocery store, I'm like, go away. It's like so. I do think that
the schools that have standards, it's not going to matter what you're sick from. If you're sick, you're going to be sent home.
Yeah. I don't know if this is true, but I heard that we had a mild flu season last year because everybody was wearing the using the hand washing and the masks and stuff. So maybe, hopefully, people are at least doing it. I also heard in the gas station the other day, so I don't know if it's true, but this guy said, people are getting pneumonia now because they keep wearing the same mask. And I was wearing my 4-day-old mask. I was like, oh no.
I don't know whether that's true or not. I have not heard that, but obviously there are, reasons why you don't want to just continue to wear the same mask day after day without, especially if it's disposable. I would think that Legionnaire's disease would be more of a worry than pneumonia, but
now, you're talking to a guy, a hypochondriac. You're saying all the wrong words. I'm Googling right now. There's just a picture of a coffin.
Anyway, and it's not that you can't wear, hospitals are wearing some of these disposable masks, over and over, but they take steps to sanitize them.
I literally have a box of like 500. And it's just, there's one in my van. I'm like, oh, it'll work.
Yeah. So I know what you're saying. It surprises me how many vehicles you see with a mask hanging around the rear view mirror, that has become such a common sight, seems like about 3/4 of the vehicles you see out there have a mask hanging around the rear view mirror.
And I think that's the reason I reuse them a lot, is because for a while, my van, the floorboard was just like masks. I was like, man, somebody's making a killing, man. There's like 50 masks here. They're all mine.
Yeah, I know what you're saying. I cleaned my car out the other day, and there were an awful lot of masks in there.
Yeah. So Wednesday predictions and
Wednesday we'll do predictions. I'll have somebody on with me, maybe Rustin again. Not sure yet. Might be able to get Trace on with us. But we'll do some predictions. We'll take a look at the playoff picture. And then obviously the week after, by a week from today, the playoffs are going to be set. So we'll take a look at, all the first round matchups. And then, the season's going to go pretty quickly from there on out. A week from today, we'll know who's playing who and who's in the playoffs and who's not. 2 weeks from today, the first round will be over with. We'll be down to 16 teams in each division, and things will go pretty quickly from there on out. And so, this season's going to be over with before you know it. Now, Oklahoma and Texas, they have a lot longer season. They've still got 2 or 3 regular season games left. As a matter of fact, they've still got 3 regular season games left. Then they've got a much longer playoff than we do. So where we finish up the Saturday after Thanksgiving, Texas and Oklahoma don't finish their seasons until the Saturday before Christmas, I believe. Yeah, so it's their season's almost a month longer than ours. So they've still got quite a bit to go. But Kansas, it'll be wrapping up pretty quickly. It really will.
Time's flying.
Yeah.
Like this has been the quickest year of my life, easily.
That, as my parents used to tell me a lot of things that I thought were BS.
Yeah.
But, and I've found as I've gotten older that most of them were true. One of the truest things they ever told me was the older you get, the more time flies.
Yeah.
And they're right. When I was a kid, when you're 16 years old, a year is a long damn time.
Yeah, it is.
When you're 54 years old, a year is not very damn long at all. I mean, it's just like that.
Summer was it seemed long for a while, but like when it got close to the end, you're like, this wasn't long enough.
Yeah.
But like the school year was always just like 100 years away till you were done.
Yeah, you're right. And a lot of that is perspective. I mean, when you're 16, a year is 1/16 of your life.
Yeah.
When you're 54, a year's 1/54 of your life. That's a huge difference, But yeah,
it was literally just January.
Yeah. And, but this whole COVID thing has kind of played with your sense of time too. Because to me, March, April, and May, those months were forever. But then June, July, and August just flew by,
Yeah.
So,
yeah, those first few months when nobody knew what was going on, that was kind of.
Yeah. And when you were pretty much felt like you needed to just stay in your house all the time. And those were long months. They really were. But
yeah.
Well, Derek, thank you for hosting with me.
For sure, man.
I appreciate it. Everybody check out Back Home Media, check out their webpage, check out their new Twitch feed. I noticed more of our hosts are starting to get their own Twitch channels.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that's something I should do at some point and just haven't gotten around to.
We got things to talk about, man.
Yeah, there we go. Well, for me, a lot of it is once football season's over, I'll get more stuff done than I have between football and having to do all of our IEPs here in the month of October. I have not had much free time at all. But
is that IEP thing? Does that mean that's for like people that are doing from home learning, or?
Well, no, we actually had to write new IEPs for every one of our students.
Oh, okay.
Because of the possibility that remote learning might take place. And so normally let's say your caseload is right now, our caseload at the high school is about 30 students per caseworker. Okay. Normally you then have those 30 IEPs scattered out over the whole year. Well, basically this year we did 30 IEPs in September and October. Wow. And we didn't start them until halfway through September. And I didn't start them then because I was on quarantine. So I basically did 30 IEPs in the month of October. And I'm not quite done. I've still got 2 or 3 left to finish up this week that we had to reschedule for one reason or another.
Yeah.
So when I get those done this week, I will breathe a huge sigh of relief because I have literally had nothing. All of my free time almost has been writing IEPs. I mean, it's been crazy. And either that or football,
Yeah.
And so, here in a few weeks, I'm going to have a whole lot more free time. So I'm kind of looking forward to that. But at the same time, I love coaching football and I love what I do. So you don't want the season to end, but yet at the same time, in a weird sort of way, you kind of look forward to it. I mean, it's kind of a weird dichotomy, I know, but yeah.
So, breathing room, man. Get that.
Yeah,
get home earlier.
Yeah, exactly. Of course, then the time change comes. So, I still get home and it's almost dark by the time I get home. All right. Well, we're talking about nothing.
I love it.
Yeah. Guys, we'll see you Wednesday. Wednesday, we'll go over some predictions. We'll take a look at the playoff picture. The playoffs will start then the week after that, and every week we'll take a little bit of a look at what's going on in the playoffs. We'll start to move back to a format where we have some guests and do some interviews and some of that kind of thing too, and we'll kind of see what the off season brings us when we get to the off season. That's something I'm still kind of thinking about and trying to plan for. But it's been a great football season so far, and like Derek said, I am surprised and pleased that we've gotten through it as smoothly as we have, and hopefully that'll continue to go on. And in the meantime, check out Back Home Media and all of their podcasts. I think, haven't we added some podcasts in recent weeks, Derek?
Yeah, we were doing one called "If You Want to Get Away with Murder," and it's basically so you've heard you live in Elkhart, you've heard forever, like Paul Harvey said, if you want to get, it's not true, Norm.
I know it's not true. I've actually looked it up, and I know people that swear up and down that they heard it. And, I could have sworn that I had heard it too at some point, but
that's how like folklore happens. Like you believe it yourself. I never claimed to have heard it, but I believed I've told people my whole life, my hometown, they just kill people like hotcakes. I was like, we're going to, that show's not, it's not going to be like a true crime show. We're not going to we're not cops, we're just going to talk about, and Elkhart's just sort of the example, but we're going to talk about sort of like how small towns, they rarely solve murders, but it mostly has to do with, these cops are used to writing speeding tickets and, and stuff like that happens. It's really hard to, but mainly just tell a story of these people that are no longer with us and, show some respect towards them and just hear their stories and stuff. So,
yeah, that's good. Yeah, I'm looking forward to checking that out. And again, Back Home Media's got a lot of other good things going on, guys, so check them out. And I guess we'll see you Wednesday, everybody.
All right, everybody.
All right. Thanks, Derek. We'll see you Wednesday.
Well, I don't think and I thought it, that's different. I said what I said and I meant it, or lamented. Words given weight without thought in a person, the way that I talk and the way that I ought to be able to pause and to say that the fault can be placed on my arms. I display for assault to disgrace in this arm. Pray for the day they could wait for the calm. You can't control the storm, only weather it, whether it's 5 weeks and 5 days of rain sideways, or scorched earth, search for death or water left with all the thorns, with the petals gone, settle on the breath of autumn. If the ground fits, wear it, the crown fits.